Hey everybody, it's Victor here. Let's go ahead and get started with this opening move guide for Dithmarchen. And here we find ourselves in northern Germany, where we find the People's Democratic Republic of Dithmarchen. Here, ready for you guys to play. Now, if you don't understand why I mean by that, basically, Dithmarchen is the communist EU4 meme, and it kind of originated with your government type. See, you are a peasant's republic. To understand this thematically, go ahead and watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail, specifically the scene of "Help, help, I'm being repressed." You'll find it out there. Watch that and you'll basically understand what Dithmarchen's basically running like. It's kind of weird. And then Paradox leaned into it with your mission tree, which includes things like seizing the means of production and getting claims on all of Russia to spread your communist ideology. Now, why does this matter? You see, it's not actually the missions or any of that, it's the actual modifiers that matter for what I'm going to explain to you. See, you get the +5 morale. When you add that to your starting traditions, you will be starting with the same morale advantage that Castile enjoys, which means you will be winning fights that you probably shouldn't necessarily be winning. You'll be able to take out pretty much everybody in the north here because you'll be winning those fights that, again, even when you're equal or slightly outnumbered, you're able to push through. The other one is shock damage received. What that will do is basically for the entire game, you're going to be taking 10% less casualties during the shock phase than you otherwise normally would have. Since it's early on, that means you're going to be able to punch significantly higher with that morale and the casualties being lower than you would against if you didn't have these. Meaning Dithmarchen, it's able to expand fairly quickly depending on a couple of factors. That is, knowing what you're doing and what the diplomatic situation is going to be. But let's go ahead first and talk about the disadvantages of Dithmarchen so you know what you're dealing with. You see, this is actually historically where they built the Kiel Canal. It starts off about right there and then it spreads up and it exits about right up here if I recall correctly. So they didn't build this in prime real estate like Lübeck or Hamburg or Bremen or anything like that. Instead, they built it in the swampy marshlands that nobody lived in, and that means it's going to take a lot for you to actually develop this province up because it's a marsh. And to make it a little bit more ahistorical, though, because that's all kind of historic, you are a communist government that is growing its own food and able to feed itself, which, you know, shouldn't be the case, but if they want to go with that, fine. Just be aware, given the fact that you have that high development cost, you start off with low development, and your trade good is not amazing, you're not going to have a whole lot of money naturally coming in. Leviathan does alleviate that somewhat, because now you can steal development, including tax, to help get you through the early stages, but realistically, it is going to be you expanding down here. The other disadvantage that you have is despite you being the communist government, your color is teal. Sorry, but honestly, it should be red. It should be the East Frisian, or at least the Denmark red. I don't know why it's teal. Paradox, you guys need to fix this. But let's go ahead and actually get started in explaining what you actually have to know. First things first, your ruler here. This is an amazing ruler. You'll be lucky to get this. Thing is that this ruler is completely random. I've done about 50 to 60 of these independent little tests to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I have seen everything from 666 to a 010. It's going to be completely random what you get. No matter what you get, though, you do not need to restart if you get a low number. You'll be fine, because you can simply wait 4 years and not re-elect them. It will not be the end of the world. I'm stressing this because this is not actually what will matter on whether or not you're running successful. It's 4 years. What will matter on whether or not you're going to have an easy run or not is whether or not all these guys have allies that are dangerous or not. So you need to wait for that. While you're here, though, focus military points. I don't care what these numbers happen to be, focus military points. The reason why is all those military advantages that you have from here and your government reform, if they get Miltech first before you, they will have more morale than you despite your modifiers, and what military tactics does is, if they have more military tactics than you do, they will do increased damage to you, nullifying your other tradition. So if you can get there first, the better for you. It's not the end of the world if they do get to it first. You simply have to use your terrain here, which is defensive, while all of this is not, to your advantage. So you can attack them down here, but if they go to your capital, absolutely jump them on your capital. It'll be a defensive fight, and they'll take -1 to dice rolls. If you combine those two, you will usually stack wipe the enemy. I will point this out, though. Do not cross this strait. If you cross this strait, you will be at -1 dice rolls because it's -2 to cross the strait. Get military access through Hamburg, and if they are your rival because they don't like you, get it through Lunenburg, Sass-Lauenburg, and Holstein or Denmark to then get to your capital. It is better than walking over, unless you are playing beat the clock to prevent a siege from going through. Just walk around. It'll be better for you. Now, that is the ruler situation. Let's go ahead and talk here about the rivals. Do not set your rivals. You are going to set your rivals right before you attack them. So just do not touch them for now. The reason why is while these guys will already ally each other, these might not be the guys you're first going after. Wolgast, you're not going to get claim on Wolgast for a while. You can absolutely fight Wolgast early, but you're going to deserve that right before you declare war, and that is when you rival Wolgast. Just be sure to keep it in your mind before you declare war to look up here, because you want to make sure your rivals are set. Just get in the habit of doing that, and you should be fine. I will admit, I am horrible at this, so try and be mindful of it. If you don't rival them, if you look here, it's not really the end of the world, especially if you already have claims, and you should have claims. It really is just to try and make it a little bit easier and get you that power projection so you get more monarch points coming in, and you'll have more morale from higher power projection. That's it. Let's talk about your ships and your trade. So everybody wants to sell the cogs first, and I see this a lot of the time. Go ahead and just mothball them for now. You have better things to do with your diplomats right now. You can choose to sell them later if you want, but at the end of this I will explain an alternative on why you might want your cogs. It's a personal choice on what you do, but I'll get to that later. Your light ships, have them protect trade in Lubeck. Don't send them to the English Channel to do either protecting trade or privateering. Here's why. If you protect trade in English Channel, you'll be making about half as much money as you would from protecting trade in Lubeck. And then if you privateer, you'll be making close to the same amount. You'll still be making more with Lubeck, but at the cost of making everybody in the English Channel mad at you. And these are people you need to make sure are not mad at you, usually to prevent a coalition. So don't irritate them, because it'll just make it more likely you have to fight a coalition, or you can't take as much land because you can't simply appease them. Let's go ahead and now move on to one of the last things I get to talk about before I go to the diplomacy, and that is the crown land and the estates. I highly recommend this setup. It will get you all the benefits you can as quickly as you can with very minimum or minimal negative downsides. So let me go through these one at a time and why you need them individually. You need patronage of the arch because you're going to need prestige. I will get to why you need the prestige later, but you will absolutely need this, so take it. Then you have indebted to the burghers. You are going to be going into debt. Your economy is trash. And I mean, it is trash. And this is what it is now. You are going to go even further into debt soon. So trust me, just take a debt to the burghers. You get the loans for a lower interest. It's just better for you just to take it now. Then you have land of commerce and religious state. Honestly, crown land is not as valuable as monarch points, and having those 1 or 2 monarch points coming in will be a definite benefit for you long term. Then you have the land rights. This is because you will eventually, depending on how you're playing, of course, want this governing capacity. If you get it now, you get it while these penalties don't matter. You can get them later, but trust me, you're going to get the crown land back very quickly. Lastly, you have the oversight by the clergy and church sanctuaries. Now, the oversight by the clergy is fairly obvious. It's there to improve the loyalty, because that doesn't do anything else. But this I wanted to make abundantly clear. The church buildings. What it's talking about here are the church and cathedral, or whatever these happen to be called, in whatever it happens to be. And this is for general advice. Never build these. I hear people tell me all the time that they're perfectly fine to build and it's a good strategy. It is not a good strategy under any circumstances. If you think they're good, leave a comment below, because I need to gauge on how many people are confused by this. It's not a long discussion, but it's a discussion I will have separately. So if you want to know why you never build these, let me know. I will explain it to you in a video. But it's mainly being used to drive up the loyalty, because after I'm done with all of the crown link, because this is just the initial setup, it'll be above 60, which will mean my stability cost will go down. That will be the drifting point. So at this point, you'll notice I'm at 4%, but I'm actually at just barely below 5, because you start with 29.99999. Before you give any of these, summon the diet, and you will have the missions. If you wait until after you do this, you will typically get a mission with the burgers, or it'll be an option to have no loans. And you can do that one too if you want, just take it afterwards. But the other options you have are get enough trade power, which you don't want. You'll never get that one done. Make the Pope happy, which you don't want. You have better things to do with your diplomats. Or these dev missions. Here's the thing. I understand that a lot of people will say you don't want to dev the province. It costs too much. You have better things for your monarch points. You're going to be deving once anyway. So this will get you halfway done with this. But the other thing you need to remember is this is Leviathan. This does not say you actually have to do dev clicks. It says that the base tax has to be at least 4. And you can steal development now. Which means you can accomplish this after the very first war, because you can steal development from somebody. So don't worry about it. These will be completed, so it's an easy 10 prestige, or in the case of the burgers, money. Between the two, go with tax, simply because it is going to be easier for you to get done. And I think the easiest way to explain it is I'll explain how the mechanic works. If you go and you look at actually consolidating the land, what it will do is it'll take a certain amount, it'll give a quarter to admin, then diplo, then military, and then the rest goes to whatever's in the capital state. So if you have 4, it'll go 1, 1, 1, and then 1. Since you only have 1 province, it'll go to 1. Here's the thing. It has a priority order, which means it'll go admin, then diplo, then military, then somewhere else, or back to admin. And then if it does that, it'll go to diplo, etc., etc., etc. Which means you'll only get military points if it is at least 3 that you're taking. Or, if you have more than 1 province, it'll be 3 or 7, etc., etc. So keep that in mind. It's easier to get the tax, if only because a lot of places you're going to take development from will give you between 1 and 3. So you're going to have a lot where you don't get diplo or mil. So go ahead and just try and do the tax, just get the prestige, which will help you with your aggressive expansion decay. After you've done this, you can obviously do the Crown Land exploit if you really want to. I'm not going to do it because I know a lot of people would prefer not to use exploits. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a card up at the top. After that, just go ahead and seize land. Now, when I said that these don't matter, I meant it. Let's go ahead and look at the actual penalties. You have liberty desire from subjects. You have no subjects, so they can be wanting liberty all they want. It doesn't matter. They don't exist. Absolutism. That'll matter in 200 years. Doesn't matter now. Autonomy change. It doesn't matter at all until you're beyond 1 province. Right at now, since it's your capital, you have 0. That's your max. You can have maximum of 0. So autonomy change does not matter. And then lastly, you have national tax modifier. Your tax income is really bad. I mean, it's really bad. You're not going to be making much money from taxes at all. So don't be freaked out by that. Lastly, I will tell you now, just as a bit of information, taking Verdun right here, just these 2 provinces, will spike you up to 14% crown land. You're not going to be behind for that long. You'll get up there very quickly. At least it was 14 when I did it. So now that you have the crown land set up, you have all the estates set up, let's go ahead and move on to diplomacy. Because that'll this is kind of going to bounce around a little bit, so keep up with me. It's not going to take that much. Let's go ahead and look at your first mission, because it tells you what you need to do. You need to get claims on 2 states. It'll be Weser here, so from Oldenburg to Verdun, and then Lower Saxony, which is Lüneburg, Sass-Lauenburg, and Hamburg. So a number of claims that you could absolutely use for quick expansion. For you to get that, you need to have any theocracy have an opinion of you of 125. I know a lot of people would prefer the Pope, but the Pope is not going to be very easy. You're going to have to do quite a lot to appease the Pope. Because, let's be honest, the Pope doesn't want to ally you. And while you can absolutely throw money at the Pope, you kind of need that money yourself. So the other option you really have is finding somebody closer. Do not ally the Teutonic Order. They may seem tempting, they have a large army, but they will get you into a war against Poland at some point, and it's not worth it. The Livonian Order is the same thing, except it's with Denmark. Usually Denmark will attack them to get their land. So they're not really worth it. But if you look, you do have two that are much closer afield, that are useful. You have Munster and Cologne. The reason why these two are amazing is not because they have great armies. In fact, what happens in the HRE is that they will actually lower their army count. Both Munster and Cologne will lower it to 4. So you don't have to worry about that. The real reason you get an alliance with them is because the AI will target the weaker of the alliance members to get rid of them first. And if you look at the forts, they both have, on their capital fort, another fort, giving it fort level 3, in a woods province. That's right, they will have to sit there with 9,000 men just to get your ally out of the war. And that's basically what you're trying to do. Make it so you have an ally that either they can't really knock out of the war and is just a pestering annoyance, or at a minimum, somebody that they're going to actually have to stand on to take out, just to at least neutralize them in the war. There's different advantages on why you would pick either one, but if you look, both of them are the exact same in terms of how much they actually want to ally you. Here is the different advantages of each of them. Munster here is all one central location. That means if they do not take over the fort or stand on the fort, it'll release the rest of their provinces, meaning they're able to stay in your war longer contributing. Though they may not actually stay in the war, that is why you would keep Munster. The reason you'd keep Cologne is because they're further away from you. You see, if you take, and your only expansion opportunities are Friesland, East Frisia, and Oldenburg, the next logical expansion path would include Munster. If you ally Munster, you're cutting off your expansion path until that truce is gone. You don't have that issue with Cologne, because even if you go this way, you then have to go through Brunswick. And that will delay you long enough where this truce won't matter. So you'll be fine. I honestly recommend between these going with Cologne, simply because, yep, Munster you're probably going to want to expand into at some point relatively quickly. As far as the not able to expand anywhere else, I'll get into that in a bit. But if you look, there is a couple of reasons why they won't ally you. First is, yeah, they don't think your army's that strong. The second is, they don't really like you enough. So let's go ahead and handle these individually. To make your army strong enough, you're going to hire a mercenary group. If you go through here, you may find an amazing general, a bunch of shock damage and some siege. They you can hire now, but I would recommend honestly waiting. You're only going to get 4,000 men, whereas if you wait, you can probably spike that to at least 8,000. And then they're going to be more worth it than hiring them now. At this point, hire the free company. Now, I will point out a last bit of advice here. I know some people don't understand this. Do not hire a general yet. You see, hiring a mercenary group will take away 5 professionalism. But it takes that professionalism away, not when you click it to hire them here, but when this progress bar is done and the day after when they actually spawn. So if you hire a general now, you're going to get 1 professionalism to lose 5, so you'll be back down to 0 on the 22nd of November. So just don't hire a general yet. You'll be fine. Once that's done, now you just need to make them like you. And this is why you need the prestige, because you're going to find out whoever their weakest rival is, in this case, Frankfurt, and you're going to scornfully insult them. Preferably something about elderberries. And with that, they should be close, if not right there. Sometimes you will need to improve relations with them, sometimes you don't. In this case, you wouldn't have to, because once that mercenary group spawns, they're going to like you enough and have a strong enough army where they will ally you. So let's worry about the next person, the other people you can ally. So the next person you can either go with Saxony, The problem is Saxony will usually ally Lüneburg, which means this is not the greatest of alliances. On top of that, they also tend to lose Thuringia here pretty quickly. So you can go with them if you want. However, I will say this, the worst thing that tends to happen is you will insult somebody, making them slightly annoyed, and they will find other allies before you can get them happy enough with you, with the mercenary group, where they won't ally you anyway. So you can take the risk, you can take the gamble, it's up to you. Personally, I don't think it's necessary, because you're probably just going to be taking out Saxony yourself. Palatinate here, they're a good option. You just got to insult somebody. I don't mind insulting Provence, they are almost always going to be rival with them. It gets you some people that like you. And now, once that is done, they will also ally you. So you're not going to be stuck with just one province, or possibly at best a 2-province minor willing to help you out. Let me go ahead and unpause until I get my diplomats back. The other person I'm going to go ahead and ally here is Würzburg. They're a quick and easy alliance because you don't even need to insult anybody, and they're willing to do it. And now that I have people back, I can go ahead and ally everybody. Once I'm able to, I'm going to start improving relations with this guy because I need to get to 125. So I'm going to go ahead and wait until I can, and then I will continue so then I can explain the rest of it. Now, as I said before, you will get claims on these 2 states. So Oldenburg to Sass-Lauenburg to Celle. These states and these countries. That means that you can get 2 claims on both East Frisia and Friesland. Go ahead and try and get claims on them. You're not going to be doing much else anyway, and start with East Frisia because you can absolutely get an easier claim on them because at this point, they're not in the HRE, which means you don't have to get it so large of a spy network. I'm going to go ahead and unpause it. Now again, don't even set rivals yet. You have a bit of time that you have to wait. Set them only right before you declare war. Here's the thing that'll happen, as you can tell with Oldenburg here. Sometimes they will ally somebody a lot larger than you're going to want to take on. Sometimes they'll ally somebody that you wouldn't mind taking on, because honestly, Volgast here, they're not exactly a person that matters. And if you simply look at your colonial range, that'll tell you what your coring range is, just so you are aware. So I cannot reach Wolgast. Too far away as an effective distance. So I can't really take land from them. So it might be worth it for me to simply wait until I hit a tech group or a tech level that will give me the colonial range, which, yeah, that's a while, but you can choose to do that if you want to, just so you can reach it, so you can take Rugen from them. I don't recommend it. Instead, since they're a rival, before you go to war, rival them back and humiliate them. Get the power projection up. However, those of them that happen to ally somebody that's really strong, let me go ahead and explain who they can ally and what you do about them. So the allies that you might be afraid of, that might have a habit of popping up. I'm just waiting for this to get to 125 and then I'm going to pause it. You have Savoy, Burgundy, Scotland, Brandenburg, Bohemia, Denmark, Poland. These are really the ones that are most likely to be a problem, and obviously you have the free cities with Austria. So this is how you deal with one of them individually. Because, yeah, there is a way you deal with each one of them. Savoy, and Milan. Milan is also a possibility in there. If it is Savoy, while they do have a considerable army, they also don't like walking through the HRE. Instead, they have a coast and they have naval transports, which means they will absolutely get on those naval transports for some reason, sail all the way around Iberia, all the way up here, and then try and do a naval invasion with 3,000 troops at a time. So you just stand slightly off the coast and walk up while they're locked in, and they'll walk right into you and stack wipe themselves over and over and over again until they're finally ready to peace out because they don't have an army left. And they have massive war exhaustion from losses. Milan. Milan is a bit more dangerous. You see, they will actually get military access, so they will come up with a full army, but they don't have as much military advantages as you do. Infantry combat ability means they'll do 10% more damage, But since shock is the only thing that matters, that just neutralizes your advantage, your other tradition, which means you'll still have the morale advantage. Just be intelligent and fight them on defensive terrain if possible, with you being the defender. Or attack them in grassland plains provinces. It's not going to be that hard given where you're at. Then you have Scotland. Scotland does the exact same thing that Savoy does, just a little bit more numbers, probably around 5,000 to 6,000. But again, you'll have 9, so you'll be stack wiping them when they get off the boats. So they'll have massive war exhaustion from a sheer number of people that you just destroy, which means they'll want to peace out relatively quickly, or then they'll have massive rebel problems. So not exactly a loss. Burgundy. Burgundy does something incredibly stupid almost every game. You see, they will usually think that they can take on France and get curb stomped really hard. Or they think that they can take Liège and that'll call in Austria and all of Austria's allies, which means Burgundy gets stomped even harder. Or, if they do neither and they actually play chill for a bit, they will almost always end up in the Burgundian succession crisis if you're not a player that can actually get it, which means their ally, if they happen to ally somebody that's impressive, like Oldenburg or East Frisia or Friesland, they'll suddenly be without their major ally, which means you can walk in and just dominate them, because there's nothing they can do. The exact same thing happens with Bohemia, by the way, with Austria's personal union war against them. So once you see that and Bohemia being dominated on, just halfway sieged out, go ahead and declare the war. They probably won't help them out, and honestly, you're just trying to take care of it. If Bohemia is about to lose anyway, even if they do come into the war, they're going to piece out of it because they'll just be personal. There'll be a personal union. It won't matter. Brandenburg. Brandenburg is a bit different because, like Milan, they will actually come to the war. As you can see, sometimes they delete all of their troops. If that happens and they're, say, allied to Verdun, run down, throw 2 guys on the provinces here after you take out their army, and just go and just carpet siege Brandenburg as quickly as possible. They will recruit an army to match yours fairly quickly. They do not have the military ideas, though, so early on, you can beat them, especially if you play smart. And if you look, the fort they have doesn't really provide any stopping except for going to Uckermark or over here. These provinces are not very well developed. You'll get over half their development and occupy or besiege them, at least over half, very quickly. So they're not hard to take out, especially when they do this. Usually they'll only decrease to about 6,000 or 7,000 troops. In that case, still drop off 1,000 and hunt them down before they get a lot more troops and just crush them. You'll knock them out fairly quickly. Saxony. Not quite the same thing. They usually go down to 4. Thuringia here is either a country that will want independence from them, which means, yep, as you can see here, Saxony will give them land to try and bribe them to stay, and then they just get even more annoyed with them, and then they'll have to get independence or not. Wait for them to either declare that independence war or not. You can just take them on, because if they're not willing to help them out, you're going to outnumber Saxony. Sure, they'll be in the war, but Saxony will be alone, and you can just wipe them out. They're not a massive problem. The 2 that you actually have to worry about, however, are Poland and Denmark. The reason Poland is annoying is because they don't have any of those problems. They usually are going to be relatively stable and willing to defend people, at least unless they somehow get into a war with the Ottomans and are half occupied, or a war with Muscovy and are half occupied. So Poland is an unusual circumstance, and if they ally anybody here, you're going to have to play an incredibly long game trying to find a situation where they're not going to help them out, or until you're able to at least beat Poland toe-to-toe. So if that happens, plan around not taking that province, at least for a very long time. Denmark has similar problems to some of them, except their wars tend to be either one of their rivals attacks them, England usually one of them, or Muscovy being one of them, or they're in an independence war with Sweden, or these 3 countries will go after Livonian Order. Here's the problem. All of these 3 countries and all their armies will go up here and around this way, while the Livonian Order, Riga, and Teutonic Order will go down this way and occupy half their country. If this happens, they may not actually defend their allies. It's kind of a coin toss from what I've seen. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on their losses and attrition they're taking for war exhaustion. So keep an eye on it. You might find that one opportune moment to go after them. Don't lose it because you're not paying attention. And basically that's it. You're simply looking at who would be the easiest expansion opportunity. Right now, given my situation, it's here in Saxe-Lauenburg, and then it's over here with these two. Obviously, my mission's going to take a bit longer because I'm not able to take out Oldenburg or Verdun as easily. But if you look, Wolgast, not exactly a threat. Saxony, not exactly a threat. So I can probably get this mission done, and then the next mission on top of that will involve me getting claims on the Frisia area, which, yep, is what I'm already expanding into. That's why I'm saying go ahead and get those claims, because if you can get that, you can then continue moving on. You only need 3 provinces and 1, 2, 3. You don't even have to expand any further than that. So read the missions, understand the missions, take advantage of it, find who is the easiest targets. That is essentially what you're going to be doing. There are a couple of bits of advice I can give you otherwise, though. You have a choice, given the unlawful territory, to conquer lands, say take out all of Verdun, and then release them as a vassal. If you are going to do that, be sure you have a claim or a spy network built up on Brunswick so you can drop a couple of claims down so you can go after them too. Because you're only going to have that open for a brief time, if that's what you're choosing to do. You can also vassalize them from the war screen for a little bit less aggressive expansion, but of course, as usual, they will be very disloyal. If you end up in a war against a free city, let's say Bremen here or Hamburg were allied to Verdun, make sure you do not take them at this point. What you need to do is, if you look, they are 16 development. That means they are going to cost you about 30-ish aggressive expansion to take with co-belligerating them, which you can't do. Non-co-belligerated, it's going to be about 44. So it is going to be quite expensive for you to take them, which means you can take Bremen and that's about it. You won't be able to take any other land without a coalition firing. However, if you're in Leviathan, you can steal their development. When you go to take their development from Bremen, you will take 4 development from them for 8 aggressive expansion. The nice thing about doing that is it will reduce the aggressive expansion of then taking them without co-belligerating them by about 6 or 8. Which means you're taking the aggressive expansion now to take less later. And usually it's not you're taking small bits of aggressive expansion that triggers a coalition, it's that spike. You can't deal with the spike. If you are happening to have a problem with it, however, there is something to keep in mind. A coalition will never conquer provinces from you. They will make you release countries, release tags if there are cores there, or release vassals. So if you have Verdun as a vassal, they'll make you give them up, but they will never actually take Dithmarchen from you. So moving development into your capital, as bad as that capital is, will just mean that you're feeding more peasants with your grain. Lastly, right now, I believe one of the metas that are forming is making colonial nations, given how strong they are. Obviously, if you do happen to go exploration ideas or expansion ideas, that's going to be a slight problem because you're kind of out of range. You don't have the range to easily get to the New World. However, you do have an option, and this is why you would keep the cogs. If you look, all of Ireland, they're also the exact same amount of ships you have. And I believe the exact same composition that you have too. This means you can build a light ship or a cog and usually be able to get dominance over here. And if you can find one that only has an ally in the interior, that means you can actually potentially beat their navy. So you can no CB your way in to, say, Ormond here, which will bring in Leinster, which means you can take both of them or just one of them, and that will decrease your actual distance you have to travel by about a quarter to a third, meaning you can go exploration. The other thing to point out, a lot of people forget, if you're waiting for it, you can drop a colonist in here, which will give you free development every year, or at least a chance of it happening. And given the fact you're really not going to be clicking in here at all, this will help increase the development just naturally on top of you stealing a bunch of things. But what ideas you pick are up to you. That is why I said if you still want to sell your cogs, go for it. They're only really useful if you're coming over here to Ireland. Other than that, you can absolutely get rid of them and then build more of something else in their place. But with that, you're pretty much good to go. Again, before you go after somebody, say Verdun here, make sure you rival them, get that power projection up, and since you're also going to go after Wolgast, rival them too, so you can take all of Verdun, which will probably get you about 20, and then humiliate them, which will knock you above 50, meaning you'll get extra monarch points, extra morale of armies, and a bunch of other tiny little bonuses that'll be helpful for you. But with that, you're pretty much ready to go. As far as the achievement, you just need to see if Burgundy will implode. A lot of the times I'm noticing that Holland will get free because they don't like Burgundy that much, and Burgundy doesn't improve relations. So that might be the easy part. Zeeland over here, you'll just have to slowly whittle Denmark down and improve your own country and your own situation, but there you go. And I hope this has been a help to you guys. If you guys like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I will be doing more nation guides coming soon. If you want to see a specific nation or a specific mechanic has been bothering you, if you don't understand something, leave a comment below. I'll absolutely do the nation guides you guys ask for, but also I'll explain whatever mechanics you guys are having problems with. But, thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day.